So in chapter 4, Rafe, Esquith starts with, the best teachers stand for a set of principles on which they will not compromise. Meaning teachers should stand for what they believe and not what the principal or the state believes. The first topic he talks about in this section is there are no shortcuts. He talks about students who aren't given the same opportunities, students of poverty versus students of wealth. Wealthy parents can hire tutors while unwealthy parents cannot afford this luxury. But is a child's education really a luxury? Rafe Esquith tells a story about a specific child that attended school and didn't get as much help as he needed. So he extended the number of school days into the summer and on Saturday and the hours that students were in school to give them more of an opportunity to study. He uses a comparison of Magic Johnson. He didn't become a star athlete overnight, he had to practice. So with education, you have to practice in order to make your point across. The next part is, I have high expectations. He talks of teachers in his school who tend to lower their standards just to get a student to understand so they can pass the class. He says this is not a good way of teaching because you're shorting students on their education. If last year's class can perform Shakespeare, this year's class can perform Shakespeare. The best way to summarize this is a poem he puts in the book. He says, there was once a pretty good student who sat in a pretty good class, who was taught by a pretty good teacher, who always let pretty good pass. He wasn't terrific at reading, he wasn't a whiz-bang at math, but for him education was leading straight down a pretty good path. He didn't find school too exciting, but he wanted to do pretty well, and he did have some trouble with writing, and no one had taught him to spell. When doing arithmetic problems, pretty good was regarded as fine. 5 plus 5 didn't always add up to be 10. Pretty good answer was 9. The pretty good class that he sat in was part of a pretty good school, and the student was not the exception. On the contrary, he was the rule. The pretty good student, in fact, was part of a pretty good mob, and for the first time he knew that he lacked was when he looked for a pretty good job. It was then when he sought a position, he discovered that life could be tough, and he had soon had a sneaking suspicion pretty good might not be good enough. The pretty good town in our story was part of a pretty good state, which had pretty good aspirations and prayed for a pretty good fate. There was once a pretty good nation, pretty proud of the greatness it had, which learned too much too late. If you want to be great, pretty good is in fact pretty bad. The third point in this chapter is I separate church and state. Esquith talks about a student that was pushed aside by a past teacher. It wasn't intentional, but it still hurt the child's feelings and left him confused. This particular teacher invited students to vacation Bible school at her church, but the specific student was a Jehovah's Witness and wasn't allowed to go. Through the story, Esquith makes it clear that no matter the intentions, the consequences of excluding a child should be heavily weighed. How can a teacher expect to be fair when he or she only invites or teaches to students of the same religion? Other students have also spoken out against the teacher's seemingly forced opinion of church. The driving point is to keep the two separate, in order to avoid stepping on toes and in order to create a morally right compass for all students, not just some. Church and state should remain separate in public schools.
The next 3 points are, I teach English. He starts by saying that the typically there's two sides, whether or not you should teach English to people who don't speak English, or whether or not you should just teach them in their native language. And he says that basically the best system would teach them both languages so that they're bilingual. And so he thinks it's good to start off in their native language and then eventually merge into the English language, because the purpose of educating a child is to eventually get them a job in the future, and they have to know English in order to get a job in America. And so he encourages his students to speak their native language at home, and he honors their cultures, but he teaches them the best English he can in order to prepare them for college entrance exams. The next point is, I have an educational agenda. He begins the segment by informing the reader that the new textbooks come out every so many years, and it's not because the material changes at all. It's because They want to make money off of the books, and also the government that is, the political party that's in the government at that time wants the students to learn their viewpoint of that subject. And so he says, seriously, how many ways can you teach Johnny his multiplication tables? Arithmetic has not changed. If a math text is so complicated that the average 5th grade teacher can't understand it without hours of instructions, then there is something wrong with the book or the teacher or both. If we want Johnny to calculate better, then we need to hire better teachers, not buy new textbooks. He then goes on to talk about the literature that they're teaching in the classroom, and tells a story about a substitute teacher who didn't approve of the Malcolm X poster that was hanging in the classroom, and said that you shouldn't teach your students his story, and that he was a bad person and you don't want your students reading that stuff, and actually pays him $100 to take the poster off the wall, which the teacher takes the money and goes and buys new books for the classroom, which the substitute teacher again doesn't approve of. And he tells them, I don't care about the views of the opinions in the books. They're simply views and opinions. What matters is the history in the writing and the quality and power of the voice of the author. The last point that he makes in this chapter is that I will not waste time. It says there are 163 days of instruction in a school year. The first days are spent preparing the students to work, and the last days are spent having parties and cleaning up. Needless to say, there's a lot of time to get everything across before the students are out of his class. Then he tells about a story where they have a workshop that all the teachers have to go to, and they're going to be out of school for several days, I think 3 days, and he doesn't want to go because he's made plans with his class to launch their rockets and to, I think, re-practice their plays and their guitar skills and all that kind of stuff, and all the stuff that he wants to accomplish in those 3 days. But the principal says, I'm going to dock your pay if you don't go to this conference. And so he ends up going, and he thinks that the speakers are really good, but they don't teach him anything that he didn't already know or doesn't already incorporate in his lessons. And so he felt it was a complete waste of time. And so on the very last day, he just doesn't go. He doesn't return back after lunch, and he just thinks it's pointless. So then when the next year comes around, and the teacher or the principal again is like, I'm going to dock your pay if you don't go, and he's like, well, I'm not going. And he said, well, this year the conference is 5 days instead of 3, and so if you don't go, you're docked 5 days of pay. And he simply says, great, that's an extra 2 days for us to work on stuff, because he's not going to go to the conference. And they dock his pay and everything, but he doesn't care because he doesn't waste his time with pointless conferences when he could be teaching his kids. So that's the end of chapter 4, and I'm also going to go over what the epilogue is about, and it's actually a really neat little story that he concludes with about why he really is encouraged to be a teacher every single day and put in all the extra work that he does. He starts off as saying he was having a bad day. He had to walk to work in the rain. One of the girls that he taught before, he found out she had just ran away from home. The school was giving his extra money for his class to something else to buy, like a Xerox machine or something like that, and instead of the orchestra and the choir and all that stuff. And his class had been rejected from a talent competition, and at the end of the day, the class left his room in like a total mess, and no one had cleaned up their space or anything like that. So he was just like down on his luck, and he was doubting why he feels like he should be doing this. Why would he put in the extra work if if this is what he's left with at the end of the day? And then these 2 kids stayed behind and started helping him clean up. The one little girl's name was Karen. She was a hard worker, a talented artist, but very quiet. And then the other one was Danny. He's the ladies' man, the smart guy in the class, the best musician, the best actor, and all this stuff. And he starts listening to them talk to each other, and Danny's asking Karen, he's like, all these girls like me, and all of them want me to be their boyfriend, but you are the only girl that doesn't want to be my girlfriend, and you're the girl that I like. What is up? Why don't you like me? And she's like, I don't want a boyfriend that's just nice to me. I want a boyfriend that's nice to everyone. and that's not you, basically. And then the boy got upset and left the classroom, and he goes to the little girl and he's like, how did you get so smart? And she just says, because you're my teacher. And when he said that, or she said that, he like almost started to cry, and he said, that's why I do what I do, for girls like that who tell me that I'm smart because you're my teacher. And so that's about it. And he decides that he's not ever going to doubt his extra effort to help these kids anymore. So that's the end.
Hey guys, thanks for watching our summary of our podcast about Rafe Esquith. There are no shortcuts.
We use 2 different resources, and they are...
One was Google Books.
And we use the actual book to read it.
That was great.
Right?
Thanks.
Peace out.
Wait.
Oh.
Wait.
Oh.
Wait.
Oh. Oh crap. Oh crap. Oh crap.
Hey, it's my turn, shut up. It's my turn, shut up. Hey, it's my turn, shut up.